September 1942. Detroit, Michigan. The Willow Run assembly plant stretches longer than the Chrysler Building laid sideways, 4 stories tall, a single roof covering 67 acres. Inside, a B-24 Liberator bomber moves down the production line every 63 minutes. Not every day, every single hour. The sound is deafening. Rivet guns chattering in overlapping bursts, hydraulic presses slamming metal into wing spars, overhead cranes swinging fuselages through the air like steel insects. Outside, 70 miles. Away, Adolf Hitler stands before a map of Europe. Every nation from France to Poland bears the swastika. The Atlantic Wall is rising. U-boats are sinking 700,000 tons of Allied shipping each month. German factories in the Ruhr Valley pour out tanks and artillery shells around the clock. Messerschmitt fighters roll off assembly lines in Regensburg. Krupp steel plants in Essen produce more armor plate than any facility on Earth. And yet, by the end of this war, the United States will produce more combat aircraft than Germany, Japan, and Italy combined. More ships, more tanks, more trucks, more ammunition, more of everything. The question is not whether America outproduced Nazi-controlled Europe. The question is how a nation that was still recovering from the Great Depression, a nation that entered the war late, a nation separated from the fighting by 2 oceans, how did it bury the Axis powers under an avalanche of steel? The answer begins not with production, but with collapse. December 1941. The United States is not ready for war. The Army ranks 17th in the world, smaller than Romania's. Total tank production for the year, 331. Germany produced 3,800. American factories are retooling. Steel mills are negotiating contracts. Labor unions are debating wage scales. Shipyards are drafting blueprints. Nothing is moving fast enough. Then Pearl Harbor burns. Congress declares war within 24 hours. President Roosevelt announces a production target that sounds impossible. 60,000 aircraft in 1942. 125,000 in 1943. Military planners call it fantasy. Industrial experts call it mathematical fiction. The United States produced fewer than 6,000 military aircraft in 1940. Now, Roosevelt demands a 20-fold increase in 2 years. But he understands something the generals do not. America's greatest weapon is not on any battlefield. It is already here, embedded in the infrastructure, waiting. The Industrial Revolution transformed the United States differently than Europe. European factories grew vertically, specialized, concentrated in historic manufacturing centers: Essen, Düsseldorf, Birmingham, Lyon. When war came, those factories converted to military production, but they remained geographically clustered, vulnerable to strategic bombing, dependent on coal and rail networks that crossed contested borders. American industry grew horizontally, spread across an untouchable landmass 3,000 miles wide. No enemy bomber could reach Detroit. No submarine could shell Pittsburgh. No tank column could threaten the oil fields of Texas. The infrastructure was already vast, already decentralized, already operating at a scale Europe had never achieved. And it was about to be unleashed, but scale means nothing without speed. Germany controlled the industrial heartland of Europe by mid-1940. Factories in Czechoslovakia, France, Belgium, and the Netherlands were absorbed into the Reich's war machine. The Skoda works in Czechoslovakia alone produced more tanks than all of Britain in 1941. French steel plants fed German foundries. Belgian coal mines fueled German locomotives. By 1942, Nazi Germany effectively controlled the manufacturing capacity of 300 million Europeans. The United States had 130 million people. The math seemed insurmountable, except the math ignored one variable: flexibility. American factories were not built for war. They were built for cars, refrigerators, radios, washing machines, consumer goods, mass production at ruthless efficiency. Henry Ford's assembly line philosophy had spread across every major industry. Standardization, interchangeable parts, continuous flow production. The River Rouge plant in Dearborn, Michigan, took in raw iron ore and coal at one end and spit out finished automobiles at the other. Vertical integration. No delays. No bottlenecks. When war came, that system did not need to be invented. It only needed to be redirected. The Ford Motor Company stopped building civilian cars on February 10, 1942. By April, the same assembly lines were building Pratt & Whitney aircraft engines. The transition took 8 weeks. Germany never made that leap. Hitler refused to fully mobilize the civilian economy until 1943. He believed total war production would demoralize the German people, fracture domestic morale, invite rebellion. So German factories continued producing consumer goods alongside military equipment. Luxury cars rolled off Mercedes-Benz lines, while panzer tanks waited for parts. Civilian appliance production continued until 1944. The Nazi economy operated under the assumption that the war would be short. Blitzkrieg, lightning war, quick victories. No need for prolonged industrial endurance. That assumption was a knife in the lung. But speed without resources is just motion. The United States did not simply convert factories. It doubled them, tripled them, built entirely. New industrial complexes in months. The Kaiser Shipyards in Richmond, California, did not exist before the war. Henry Kaiser, a construction magnate, proposed building cargo ships using assembly line techniques borrowed from the auto industry. The Navy laughed. Ships were not cars. Welding a 10,000-ton Liberty ship required skilled labor, precision engineering, months of careful construction. Kaiser ignored them. He hired workers with no shipbuilding experience, housewives, farmers, retirees, taught them a single task: welding one seam, riveting one joint, installing one valve. Then he broke the ship into prefabricated sections, built those sections simultaneously in different parts of the yard, assembled them like a jigsaw. Puzzle on the slipway. The first Liberty ship took 244 days to complete. The second took 150. By 1943, Kaiser's workforce was launching a Liberty ship every 24 hours. The record was 4 days, 15 hours. A 10,000-ton ship built faster than a house. Germany had no equivalent. The Kriegsmarine built submarines in sections, but never achieved continuous flow production. U-boat construction remained artisanal, customized, dependent on skilled labor that was increasingly pulled to the Eastern Front. Admiral Dönitz demanded 40 submarines per month to strangle Allied supply lines. Germany never produced more than 30. Meanwhile, American shipyards launched 3 Liberty ships per day at peak production, 18,000 merchant vessels during the war. Germany sank 3,000. The math was brutal. For every ship Germany destroyed, America built 6, but production is only half the equation. The other half is resources. And here, the disparity becomes existential. The United States sat atop the richest resource base on the planet. Oil fields in Texas and California, iron ore in Minnesota, coal in Appalachia, copper in Montana, bauxite in Arkansas. Rubber plantations, well, no, that was a problem. 90% of the world's natural rubber came from Southeast Asia. Japan seized those plantations in early 1942. Suddenly, the United States faced a crisis. Every tank, every truck, every aircraft required rubber tires, rubber hoses, rubber gaskets. Without rubber, production would collapse. The military had a 6-month stockpile. Then, nothing. The government mobilized chemists, DuPont, Goodyear, Standard Oil, 50 companies working in parallel. The Manhattan Project for Rubber. They reverse-engineered synthetic rubber from petroleum, scaled it to industrial production in 18 months. By 1944, the United States produced 800,000 tons of synthetic rubber annually, more than the entire world produced naturally before the war. Germany also developed synthetic rubber, Buna S, but never matched American output. They lacked the petroleum feedstock. The Romanian oil fields at Ploiești supplied 70% of Germany's fuel. Once Allied bombers began hitting Ploiești in 1943, German rubber production crippled. American rubber production accelerated. Then there was aluminum. Aircraft construction devoured aluminum. A single B-17 Flying Fortress required half a ton. The P-51 Mustang needed a quarter ton. Aluminum came from bauxite, refined using massive amounts of electricity. The United States built hydroelectric dams across the Pacific Northwest specifically to power aluminum smelters. The Grand Coulee Dam, the Bonneville Dam. Cheap, abundant electricity flooded into plants operated by Alcoa and Reynolds Metals. By 1943, American aluminum production reached 1.5 million tons per year. Germany produced 200,000. Japan produced 100,000. Again, the math was suffocating. For every ton of aluminum Germany produced, the United States produced 7. But raw materials mean nothing without labor. And here, America found its secret weapon. Women. 16 million American men joined the military. That left factories empty, shipyards silent, assembly lines frozen. In any other nation, that would mean collapse. In the United States, it meant Rosie the Riveter. 6 million women entered the industrial workforce between 1942 and 1945. Not clerical work, not nursing, welding, riveting, machining, operating cranes, assembling engines. At the Willow Run plant, women comprised 40% of the workforce. They built B-24 bombers, not assisted, not supported. Built, drilled 63,000. Rivet holes per aircraft. Installed 4 engines. Wired electrical systems. Tested hydraulic controls. Many had never held a wrench before 1941. By 1943, they were outperforming male workers in quality and speed. The aircraft rolled out flawless. Germany never mobilized women at that scale. Nazi ideology emphasized traditional gender roles. Women belonged in the home, producing children, supporting husbands. The regime discouraged female factory work until late in the war, and even then, only reluctantly. By the time Germany attempted full female mobilization in 1944, the labor pool had already been decimated by Eastern Front casualties. The opportunity had closed. The United States unlocked a labor force of tens of millions. Germany left it idle. That decision cost them the war as surely as any battle. Yet production lines require engineering, design, innovation under pressure. And here, American pragmatism collided with German perfectionism in a clash of industrial philosophy. German engineers built the Tiger tank. 60 tons, 88mm gun, armor thick enough to shrug off most Allied shells, mechanically complex. Difficult to produce. Expensive. Germany built fewer than 1,400 Tigers during the entire war. Each one was a masterpiece. Each one took months to assemble. Each one required specialized parts that could not be scavenged from other vehicles. When a Tiger broke down, and they broke down constantly, it often had to be abandoned. No spare parts, no field repairs, just dead weight. The United States built the M4 Sherman, 30 tons, 75mm gun, thinner armor, mechanically simple, easy to produce, cheap. America built 50,000 Shermans. 5 were lost for every Tiger killed, but there were always more Shermans. Always. They could be repaired with basic tools. Parts were interchangeable across models. Engines could be swapped in hours. Crews loved them because they were reliable. Generals loved them because they were everywhere. The Sherman was not the best tank. It was the most effective tank. Effectiveness is not about superiority. It is about availability multiplied by reliability multiplied by numbers. The Tiger was superior. The Sherman was effective. Effectiveness won. The same philosophy applied to aircraft. Germany built the Messerschmitt Bf 109, an exceptional fighter, fast, maneuverable, lethal in the hands of an experienced pilot. But it required precision manufacturing, skilled labor, tight tolerances. Production topped out at 34,000 over the entire war. The United States built the P-51 Mustang, also an exceptional fighter, but designed for mass production. Simplified construction, standardized components, 15,000 built. Then there was the P-47 Thunderbolt, 15,000 built. The F-6F Hellcat, 12,000 built. American factories did not build one perfect fighter. They built 4 very good fighters in overwhelming numbers. Luftwaffe pilots shot down American planes by the hundreds. American factories replaced them by the thousands. The attrition math was inescapable. And yet, production is meaningless if it cannot reach the battlefield. Logistics, the invisible war, Germany's Achilles heel. Every tank Germany built had to reach the front by rail or road. Rails that were bombed, roads that, were mud, fuel that was scarce. The Eastern Front stretched across 1,000 miles of Russian steppe. No paved roads, no hardened rail lines. Vehicles broke down in dust during summer and froze solid in winter. Supply convoys crawled forward under partisan attack. Tanks arrived at the front with broken tracks and empty fuel tanks. Even when production met targets, delivery failed. The Wehrmacht fought with supply lines stretched to snapping. The United States faced the opposite problem. Overabundance. So many supplies that bottlenecks formed not in production, but in distribution. Ports jammed with cargo. Warehouses overflowing with ammunition. Airfields stacked with fighters awaiting shipment. The problem was not scarcity. It was logistics. The U.S. military built the solution. The Red Ball Express. A dedicated trucking route from Normandy beaches to the front lines. 6,000 trucks running 24 hours a day. Drivers, mostly African-American soldiers, hauled 12,000 tons of supplies daily. Ammunition, fuel, rations, spare parts. The trucks wore out. Drivers collapsed from exhaustion. But the supplies moved. Patton's Third Army never ran. Dry. German panzer divisions, meanwhile, sat immobilized for lack of fuel 20 miles from their own supply depots. Then there was the miracle of standardization. The Allies used interchangeable parts across nations. An American-built engine could power a British truck. A Canadian-made radio could fit in an American tank. French resistance fighters used American-supplied weapons without specialized training. Everything clicked together. The Germans did the opposite. Every branch of the Wehrmacht used different equipment. The Luftwaffe's trucks were incompatible with the Army's. The Kriegsmarine's rifles used different ammunition than the SS. Even within the Army, units used a chaotic mix of captured Soviet, French, and Czech weapons. Ammunition supply became a nightmare. Spare parts were impossible. A single German infantry division might operate a dozen different vehicle types, each requiring unique maintenance. Efficiency died in complexity. But America's greatest advantage was not visible in factories or on battlefields. It was structural, financial. The U.S. economy operated on credit, investment, and future growth. War production was not funded by seizing wealth or plundering occupied territories. It was funded by selling war bonds to American citizens. Ordinary people bought bonds, millions of them. Small denominations, $18.75 for a $25 bond, redeemable in 10 years. The government raised $185 billion this way, voluntarily, without coercion. The population believed in victory enough to invest in it. That belief became steel, became ships, became planes. Germany funded its war through plunder. Jewish assets seized, Polish gold confiscated, French industry commandeered, slave labor extracted from concentration camps. 12 million forced laborers by 1944 worked to death in factories and mines. The moral horror aside, it was economically inefficient. Slave labor is unproductive. Sabotage is constant. Quality control collapses. Motivation is non-existent. A worker who believes in the mission outproduces a slave by orders of magnitude. American factory workers took pride in output. Shift competitions, efficiency awards, posters celebrating production records. Forced laborers in Germany sabotaged. Equipment slowed work, hid defects. German tanks rolled off lines with faulty welds and misaligned turrets. American tanks rolled out flawless. By mid-1943, the disparity had become apocalyptic. The United States produced 85,000 aircraft that year. Germany produced 25,000. American shipyards launched 10 million tons of new shipping. Germany launched 1 million. American factories delivered 29,000 tanks. Germany delivered 12,000. And the gap was widening. Every month, American production increased while German production stagnated under Allied bombing. The 8th Air Force began systematic destruction of German industry. Ball-bearing plants in Schweinfurt, synthetic fuel plants in Leuna, aircraft, factories in Regensburg. Each raid forced production to scatter, to hide, to slow. German factories moved underground, into caves, into tunnels, away from bombing but also away from efficient production. Assembly lines became assembly clusters. Output dropped. Quality declined. Meanwhile, American factories expanded. New plants opened. Existing plants added shifts. The Ford Willow Run plant reached peak production in 1944. One B-24 Liberator every 58 minutes, 18 per day, 500 per month. That was one factory. The United States operated dozens. Consolidated Vultee built B-24s in Texas. Douglas Aircraft built them in Oklahoma. North American Aviation built B-25 Mitchells in Kansas. Boeing built B-17s in Seattle and B-29 Superfortresses in Wichita. Lockheed built P-38 Lightnings in California. Republic Aviation built P-47 Thunderbolts in New York. Every factory operating at maximum capacity, every factory expanding, every factory hiring. The scale becomes incomprehensible. The United States produced 2.6 million trucks during the war. Germany produced 600,000. American trucks carried supplies across every theater. Europe, North Africa, the Pacific, China. Even the Soviet Union received 400,000 American trucks through Lend-Lease. The Red Army's mobility depended on American Studebakers and Dodges. Soviet offensives rolled forward on Detroit steel. Stalin admitted after the war that the Soviet Union would have collapsed without American trucks, food, and industrial equipment. The United States did not just outproduce Germany. It outproduced Germany while simultaneously supplying Britain, the Soviet Union, and China. And the food. Industrial warfare requires industrial agriculture. Soldiers need calories. Factory workers need calories. The United States fed them all. American farms produced enough food to supply the U.S. military, the American civilian population, and provide massive food shipments to Britain and the Soviet Union. 4 million tons of food to the USSR alone. Spam, powdered eggs, canned meat, grain. The Soviet Union could focus its labor on weapons production because American farms fed Soviet workers. Germany could not do this. German agriculture depended on draft horses and manual labor. Mechanization was limited. When fuel shortages hit, German farms collapsed. By 1945, German civilians were starving. American civilians were rationed but never hungry. Then there was innovation under pressure. The Manhattan Project, the proximity fuse, radar, sonar, penicillin mass production. The United States poured resources into research while fighting a global war. Los Alamos employed thousands of scientists working on the atomic bomb. MIT's radiation laboratory developed microwave radar. Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab invented the proximity fuse, a shell that exploded near its target without contact, revolutionizing anti-aircraft and artillery effectiveness. These were not lone geniuses in garages. These were coordinated, funded, industrial-scale research programs. Germany had brilliant scientists, but they were scattered, underfunded, and often ignored by a leadership that preferred proven weapons over experimental gambles. The V-2 rocket program consumed resources that could have built thousands of fighters. The V-2 killed fewer people than a single sustained bombing raid. It was a spectacular failure disguised as innovation. By 1944, the war had become a slow-motion industrial execution. Germany could not replace losses. Every tank destroyed stayed destroyed. Every aircraft shot down stayed shot down. Pilot training. Programs collapsed. New pilots received 50 flight hours before combat. American pilots received 200. German tank crews fought with exhausted veterans and terrified teenagers. American tank crews rotated experienced personnel into training. Roles, multiplying expertise across new units. The Luftwaffe lost 10,000 pilots in 1944. Irreplaceable. The U.S. Army Air Forces graduated 40,000 new pilots the same year. The final blow came from the air. Operation Point Blank. The Combined Bomber Offensive. 8th Air Force. By day. RAF Bomber Command by night. Germany's industrial base burned. Not just factories. Transportation networks. Rail yards, bridges, canals, refineries. By late 1944, German fuel production had dropped 75%. Synthetic oil plants were rubble. Romanian oil was lost when the Red Army seized Ploiești. New tanks sat immobile for lack of fuel. Luftwaffe fighters remained grounded. The panzer divisions that counterattacked in the Ardennes during the Battle of the Bulge ran out of fuel within days. They had counted on capturing American fuel depots. The depots were emptied and burned before German troops arrived. Tanks were abandoned. Crews walked back to German lines. American production faced no such constraints. Fuel flowed from Texas. Steel flowed from Pennsylvania. Aluminum flowed from the Pacific Northwest. Everything moved by rail, truck, and ship across a vast, untouched infrastructure network. No enemy disrupted it. No enemy could reach it. The continental United States remained a fortress of production, churning out weapons faster than the military could ship them overseas. By war's end, surplus American equipment filled warehouses and airfields, mountains of ammunition, thousands of unused aircraft, entire fleets of landing craft. The United States had produced so much that it could not use everything before Germany surrendered. When the war ended in Europe, American factories did not slow. They pivoted to the Pacific. The planned invasion of Japan required even more equipment, more ships, more aircraft, more ammunition. Production targets were increased. Then the atomic bombs dropped. Japan surrendered. The war ended. The factories shut down. Within months, Willow Run stopped building bombers. Kaiser's shipyards went silent. Millions of workers were laid off. The war economy evaporated almost overnight. But the infrastructure remained. The expertise remained. The industrial capacity remained. It simply shifted back to civilian production. Cars, refrigerators, televisions, the same factories, the same workers, the same ruthless efficiency. Germany lay in ruins. Factories were bombed. Rail networks were destroyed. Bridges were collapsed. 12 million forced laborers were freed. The industrial base that had powered the Wehrmacht ceased to exist. It would take a decade to rebuild. The United States emerged with the most powerful economy on Earth, untouched by invasion, enriched by wartime production, dominant in technology, industry, and finance. The gap was not just in numbers. It was structural, philosophical, existential. So how did America outproduce Germany when Europe was under Nazi control? The answer is layers. Geography, resources, labor mobilization, industrial philosophy, standardization, financial structure, innovation, logistics, and perhaps most critically, the willingness to fully commit every ounce of national capacity to total war without hesitation or ideological restraint. Germany fought a limited war with unlimited ambitions. The United States fought an unlimited war with focused, pragmatic execution. One side believed in superior engineering and willpower. The other side believed in assembly lines and mathematics. Engineering and willpower lost. Assembly lines and mathematics buried them. The legacy is still visible. American manufacturing philosophy, mass production, interchangeable parts, vertical integration became the global standard. The consumer economy that exploded after 1945 was built on wartime production techniques applied to peacetime goods. The suburban American lifestyle, the car culture, the appliance-filled homes, all of it traces back to factories that learned to build Liberty ships in 4 days and bombers in under an hour. The war did not just prove American industrial capacity. It defined it, forged it, perfected it under the most extreme pressure imaginable. And Germany learned the lesson too late. Industrial might is not about superior craftsmanship. It is about relentless, scalable, unstoppable output. The side that builds more wins. The side that builds faster wins. The side that builds smarter wins. The United States did all three. Germany did none. The war was not decided by tactics or generals or ideology. It was decided by factories, by resources, by the cold arithmetic of production. The factories won. The factories always win.